Hi, I'm Hannah. Growing up, I had everything a kid could want: loving parents and a cozy home. I was their only kid, and they spoiled me with love, not just stuff. They were big on education too, so after high school, I headed off to college and then landed a job as a travel agent. For over a decade, I hustled at a city travel agency, learning the ropes of the trade. After my folks passed, they left me a bit of money. Nothing crazy, but enough to make me think about starting my own thing. That's how I ended up opening my own travel agency. It was tough in the beginning, like, really tough. I had to scrape and claw for every client I got. But I made it work, and soon enough, the agency started doing alright, even thinking about expanding. I always believed in looking sharp, especially at work and public events. You never know who you're gonna meet, right? So, there I was, a regular at this little salon on the corner of my street, getting my hair done by Marie, a sweet woman in her 60s with hands of magic. We'd chat about everything: my business, her salon, the latest gossip. One day, Marie got all excited while she was washing my hair. "You know, Hannah, I've got a son, Mark. Such a handsome guy, and smart too. But still single. You should meet him." I was a bit taken aback, but went along with it. "Sure, why not? Could be fun." She beamed. "Great. I'll set something up." Fast forward, and I'm sitting across from Mark at a cozy little diner downtown. He was cute, alright, and had a way with numbers, working as a financial expert or something fancy like that. We hit it off, talking about everything from our favorite movies to our crazy work schedules. You gotta have some crazy stories with a job like yours. Yeah, there's never a dull moment, that's for sure. What about you? Any crazy stock market stories? I sipped my coffee, watching his face light up, talking about his day-to-day. Nothing too wild. It's mostly numbers and grumpy old men, Mark shrugged, grinning. But it pays the bills, and then some. We talked for hours, closing the place down. It was easy, comfortable. And just like that, Marie's matchmaking wasn't such a bad idea after all. After Mark and I got hitched, things took a turn. The wedding was a blast, full of laughter and dancing, but the next day it was like I woke up next to a different person. Well, not Mark, he was still the laid-back guy I fell for, but his mom, Marie, she flipped a switch or something. We were having breakfast, just a couple of days after the ceremony, when Marie dropped the bomb. "Hannah, darling, you and Mark should really think about getting a bigger place, you know? Something fitting for a growing family," she said, stirring her tea a bit too vigorously. I choked on my coffee a bit. A bigger place? We just got settled here." Mark chimed in, with that "let's not start a fight" look. "Mom's got a point, Hannah. We could use the extra space. Maybe something with a yard?" I gave him a look. "Sure, I guess. We can start looking." But Marie wasn't just talking about any house. No, she wanted us to buy a huge place, like the kind you see in magazines. And the kicker? She wanted in. Not just as a visitor, but living with us. Hannah, think about it. If I moved in, I could help out around the house. I'm planning to leave the salon, start something fresh. I've been looking into blogging, maybe a lifestyle thing, you know? She was all excited, eyes shining. I tried to keep it cool, but inside, I was freaking out. Blogging, huh? That's interesting. But living together? That's a big step. Marie nodded eagerly. Exactly. And with my blog, once it takes off, I'll be more than able to contribute. The next thing I knew, I was nodding along, agreeing to house hunt. We ended up with a gorgeous place, way beyond what I thought we needed, but it had that charm, you know? When I saw Marie's eyes light up, I thought, maybe this isn't so bad. Then came moving day. Marie had boxes and boxes of stuff, way more than Mark and I combined. As we unpacked, she directed traffic like a general. No, that box goes in the upstairs hall. And can you put those books in the guest room? It'll be my office. As the weeks went by, Marie's true colors showed. She'd taken over the house, redecorating without asking, and her helping out turned into giving orders. "Hannah, I need you to pick up some things for my new blog setup." "Oh, and we need better lighting in here, it's for the blog." I felt cornered, not just by the bills and the new house, but by this whole new family dynamic I hadn't signed up for. "Alright, I guess. We'll look into it." Lying in bed that night, I turned to Mark. "Do you really think all this is necessary? The house, your mom's blog?" Mark was quick to reassure. "It's all gonna work out, Hannah. Trust me, it's all part of settling in." Settling in, right. I signed up for a husband, not a housemate who doubled as my mother-in-law and lifestyle coach. I drifted off, wondering just how much of my new married life would be spent in the shadow of Marie's grand plans. Living with Marie and Mark was turning out to be tougher than I'd ever imagined. Mark's spending was off the charts. Almost every other day, he'd come home with something pricey, a new watch, some fancy shoes, or talking about his latest round at some upscale golf club. He even set aside a whole room just to store and display his collections of high-end watches and leather shoes. I tried to keep things chic, but affordable on my end, believing we weren't at the luxury splurge stage yet. This difference in our spending habits was becoming a regular source of friction between us. "Mark, do we really need more watches? Maybe we should be saving a bit more," I said one evening as he unpacked yet another purchase. "Hannah, I make good money. I should be able to enjoy it," he snapped, not looking up from his new shiny gadget. The conversation always ended there, with him shutting down any further discussion. Meanwhile, Marie was on a roll with her new blogging venture. It had started gaining traction faster than any of us expected. But with the fame, her demands grew too. One day, she came to me with a request, or more accurately, a demand that took me by surprise. "Hannah, darling, I've been thinking. To keep up with my blog's image, I need to get some work done. A facelift, maybe tweak my nose a bit. You know, freshen up," Marie announced as if discussing the weather. I was flabbergasted. "Marie, that sounds expensive. And cosmetic surgery? Are you sure?" She was all smiles. "Oh, absolutely. It's an investment in my career. And you know, being in the public eye now requires looking my best." I frowned. "But that's a lot of money, Marie. Money that could go to our household needs." Marie's tone shifted, turning sharper. "Hannah, you know how much this blog means to me. It's finally something of my own. I thought you, of all people, would understand." I was about to protest when she played her card. "Besides, it's not just for me. It benefits all of us, doesn't it? And I'd hate for any misunderstandings to crop up between you and Mark because you weren't supportive." Her implication was clear: help her out, or she'd stir trouble with Mark. Knowing how she could influence him, I felt my hands were tied. Despite my reservations, I agreed to finance her procedures. Marie underwent the surgery, and it was all she could talk about afterward. Her blog posts about embracing plastic surgery, not fearing the knife, and the importance of looking good raked in more views and comments than ever before. She was proud, reveling in the attention and praise, while I watched our bank account dwindle and wondered if I'd ever be able to pull us back from this spending spiral. 2 years into our marriage, and it felt like I was the only one truly pulling weight around here. My travel agency had really taken off, and I was proud to say that I was the main breadwinner. Not only did I handle all our bills, but I also paid our mortgage all by myself. Day in and day out, I juggled work, home, and everything in between. At night, I'd cook meals tailored to Marie's special diet, keeping the household running smoothly. To anyone looking from the outside, my life with Mark and his mother Marie looked picture perfect. Marie never missed a chance to gush about our wonderful family life and the beautiful home on her blog, painting a pretty picture for her followers. However, the reality inside our walls was a bit different, especially when it came to Marie's latest obsession, her live streaming. One Tuesday morning, this reality came crashing in during one of her broadcasts. I was in the middle of preparing a dietary breakfast for Marie when she decided it was the perfect time to put me on the spot. The kitchen was bustling, Marie with her phone out, capturing every mundane detail for her followers. "And here's the star of the house, my wonderful daughter-in-law, Hannah," Marie announced, thrusting her phone in my direction as I was halfway through flipping an omelette. "Morning, everyone," I said, managing a tight smile, not wanting to drop the omelette in front of the live audience. "Hannah here is the best when it comes to travel. Tell us, dear, what's the latest in the world of travel?" Marie chirped, the camera focusing on me. Clearing my throat, I set down the spatula. "Well, there are some exciting travel deals coming up, especially for those looking to escape the winter chill." Marie's eyes sparkled with an idea, and she leaned closer, her voice a pitch too cheerful. "Speaking of travel, Hannah, why don't you share with our lovely viewers your fabulous idea for our next family vacation? I believe South Africa was mentioned?" I was blindsided. "South Africa?" I echoed, my mind racing. This wasn't just an impromptu Q&A, this was Marie setting the stage for something much bigger. Yes, a luxury trip to South Africa. Safari tours, 5-star hotels, the works. Viewers, wouldn't you just love to see us on safari? I'm sure Hannah can arrange something spectacular. Her followers immediately chimed in with excitement, their comments flooding the live feed. Pressure mounted as I tried to keep my composure. "Well, it's definitely an option," I said, trying to stay non-committal. "But let's discuss it later, off-camera." As soon as Marie ended the stream, I turned to her, frustration bubbling over. "Marie, we need to talk about this. You can't just plan things and announce them without discussing them with me first, especially not live." Marie was unflappable as ever, sipping her coffee. "Oh, lighten up, Hannah. It's good for the blog. And good for your business too, don't you think?" "It's not about the blog," I pushed back, feeling cornered. "It's about respecting each other's roles in this family. You can't use your followers to pressure me into decisions." I left the room, leaving Marie to make her far-reaching plans. That evening, things escalated when she complained to Mark. She spun the story, painting me as rude and dismissive of her ideas, claiming I was getting too big for my boots. Mark stormed into the kitchen where I was cleaning up. His face was thunderous. "Hannah, we need to talk. Now." He didn't wait for my response, just marched into the living room and I followed, my stomach in knots. He spun around, his words sharp as knives. "Mom tells me you're disrespecting her ideas, acting like you're the one who calls all the shots. That's not how we're supposed to work as a family." I was taken aback, the unfairness of the accusation stinging. "Mark, that's not true. I've always supported your mom, but nothing, Hannah. You know how important her blog is to her. And if you can't support us, maybe you shouldn't be part of this family," he interrupted, his voice cold. The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I tried to reason with him, to explain my side, but he was having none of it. "I've even prepared divorce papers, Hannah. I keep them just in case you decide not to follow through with our plans." The words felt like a slap. I spent the night in our guest room, crying, feeling more alone than ever. The idea that Mark would keep such a thing ready was heartbreaking. The next morning, still reeling from the night's threats, I felt a wave of nausea that wouldn't pass. It was more than stress, something was off. I called in sick at work and made my way to the doctor's office, the weight of the world on my shoulders. Sitting in the sterile doctor's office, I was going through the motions, answering questions mechanically until the doctor gave me the news that shifted everything. "You're pregnant," he said, looking at me over his glasses. Pregnant. The word echoed in my mind, a beacon of hope in the turmoil of my marital strife. At 37, this was a moment I had hoped for, but never let myself believe would happen. Despite the chaos at home, this news filled a space in my heart with pure joy. I went home, a plan forming. Maybe this baby was a sign, a reason to mend fences. I found Mark in the office, his demeanor still frosty. "Mark, I went to the doctor today," I started, my voice steady, despite the shaking inside. He looked up, wary. "And?" And, we're going to have a baby, I said, letting the words hang in the air. The change in Mark was instantaneous. His face softened, the edges of anger smoothing out. He stood up, coming over to wrap me in his arms. Really? That's great, Hannah. I'm sorry about last night. Things will be different now. Relief washed over me, mingled with caution. But there was work to be done if I was going to keep this family together. In a move to bridge the gap, I took the initiative to plan the trip to South Africa that Marie had so publicly put on the agenda. I threw myself into the arrangements, booking excursions to Cape Town and Johannesburg, a safari in a national reserve, and trips to both a desert and lush waterfalls. The trip to South Africa was supposed to be a fresh start, a way to mend the growing rifts at home. Instead, it spiraled into a disaster from the very start. As soon as we boarded the plane, Marie began complaining about everything, the length of the flight, the turbulence, and even the meals served on board. It's way too long. How could you book such an uncomfortable flight, Hannah? Marie grumbled as another wave of turbulence shook the cabin. Trying to keep my tone even, I replied, Marie, it's the shortest route available. There's nothing I can do about the flight duration or the turbulence. Her complaints didn't let up, and by the time we landed, I was already exhausted. But that was just the beginning. At the hotel, Marie's dissatisfaction found new targets. The moment we checked in, she started on about the hotel not living up to its online reputation. This place? This is where we're staying? I expected something far better, given the pictures online. Hannah, are you sure this is the right hotel? She criticized loudly as we stood at reception. Mark, as always, was quick to back her up. Yeah, Hannah, Mom's got a point. It doesn't look like what we saw on the website. Feeling the sting of their joint disapproval, I managed to say, this is one of the best-rated hotels in the area. I'm sorry it's not what you expected, but let's try to make the best of it. Despite my efforts to keep things positive, Marie's and Mark's displeasure only deepened. Marie found fault with every aspect of the hotel, from the service to the food, and Mark echoed her every sentiment. It didn't help that I was feeling increasingly unwell, the early stages of my pregnancy making it hard to keep up with the demanding schedule of tours and activities I had planned. The tipping point came after yet another day of excursions that neither of them enjoyed. Marie summoned me to her room for a serious talk. The moment I entered, she launched into a tirade. Hannah, you are by far the worst travel specialist I've ever seen. You've completely ruined our trip, she accused, her voice sharp and cold. Stunned, I tried to defend my efforts. Marie, I've arranged everything according to what we discussed. I'm trying my best here. But she wasn't having any of it. Grabbing my arm, she nearly shouted, Get out of here, Hannah. Stop ruining our vacation. Before I could react, she pushed me out and slammed the door. Shaken, I returned to my room, only to find my suitcase outside the door. Mark was there, his expression hard and unsympathetic. I can't deal with this anymore, Hannah. You being sick all the time, it's too much. I think it's best if you leave, he said, his voice void of the warmth I once knew. Feeling a mix of disbelief and heartbreak, I picked up my suitcase. Without a word, I left the hotel. I felt incredibly unwell, my body and mind pushed to their limits. At that moment, all I wanted was to be back in the safety of my own home in the USA. The flight back was agonizing. Every turbulence shook me not just physically, but also emotionally, my stomach churning with pain and distress. I landed back home with a sharp ache that seemed to gnaw deeper with each passing moment. Instead of the comfort of home, my first stop was the emergency room. The diagnosis confirmed my worst fears. I had suffered a miscarriage. As I lay there, trying to process the loss, my phone lit up with countless missed calls from Mark and Marie. With a heavy heart, I called back, only to be thrust into another chaotic situation. Marie's voice crackled through the line, frantic and demanding. Hannah, it's all gone wrong here. We've been robbed, our documents, our money, everything. And it's gotten even worse, she blurted out, barely pausing for breath. Trying to steady my voice, I asked. What happened, Marie? She continued, her voice tinged with panic. We were out, and I was filming for my blog, just a normal day, when someone snatched our bags. And when I complained about it to the hotel staff, they were so rude, I had to tell them off. They called the police on us, and now we're in jail. You have to help us, Hannah. Her words swirled in my head, piling onto the mountain of stress I was already under. Marie, I'm in the hospital, I said, my voice breaking. I've had a miscarriage. There was a brief silence on the line. Then Mark's voice came through, his tone anger and impatience. It doesn't matter, Hannah, we really need you right now. This is serious, we could be stuck here. The lack of sympathy, the sheer audacity to dismiss my pain so quickly, it was like a slap in the face. I'm not going to help you. Handle it yourselves. Without waiting for a response, I hung up, a mix of anger, sorrow, and disbelief coursing through me. In that lonely hospital room, as I grieved the child I would never hold, I made a silent vow to myself. I would start anew, rebuild, and never let my sense of self be compromised again. The day I was discharged from the hospital marked the start of my new life. I went straight home to finalize the severance of my ties to Mark and Marie. With a steady hand, I signed the divorce papers that Mark had prepared earlier. Afterward, I gathered every item that belonged to him and his mother, clothes, personal belongings, the countless shoes, and watches that had filled our space with the excess of their lives. Everything was packed up and delivered to their cramped old apartment in the city. With that chapter closed, I took the next step. I sold the house I had bought with my hard-earned money, the house that was meant to be a home for us but never truly felt like one. Selling it was freeing, not just from the mortgage and the memories, but from the life I was so desperately trying to fit into. 2 months passed, and Mark and Marie were deported back from South Africa, arriving with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a phone in their hands. Their shock was palpable when they found strangers living in their home. The new owners, uninterested in their plight, threatened to call the police if they didn't clear off their property. Marie's voice was shaking with fury when she called me. Hannah, what the hell is going on? Where are all our things? Why are strangers in our house? I replied with a calm I hardly felt. Marie, the house was mine. I paid for it, and it was in my name. I've sold it. All your things are in your old apartment. As for Mark and you, I'm done. We're divorced. I won't be dragged back into your chaos. There was a pause, the kind that told me she was struggling to grasp her new reality. You can't do this to us, Hannah. We have rights, she insisted. I've done everything by the book, Marie. You're going to have to accept that. Goodbye. Hanging up the phone felt like shedding a heavy coat in the middle of summer, sudden and immensely relieving. The news eventually came to me through mutual acquaintances that Marie had returned to her job as a hairstylist. Her dreams of blog stardom abandoned alongside her expensive camera equipment. Mark, unable to resume his old job due to his long absence, resorted to driving a taxi. He sold his precious watch collection and wore plain, unbranded clothing. As for me, I moved into a small house on the outskirts of the city. Here, I began rebuilding not just my home but my travel agency as well. The expo was a turning point. People were genuinely interested, and their enthusiasm reignited my own. Your tours always have that personal touch. How do you do it? A curious visitor asked, her eyes scanning the brochures. It's all about understanding what the traveler wants. You listen, adapt, and sometimes, take a leap of faith, I explained, the conversation flowing easily. The expo was more than a success, and before long, I was planning expansions, considering even a potential branch in Europe. One evening, after a long day of meetings, I stopped by a small cafe, a little celebration of my progress. As I sipped my coffee, a young couple at the next table was poring over travel brochures, looking utterly confused. Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear. Are you planning a trip? I asked, the remnants of my shyness about intruding quickly swept away by my enthusiasm. Yes, but we're so lost. It's our first big trip together, and we want it to be perfect. the woman said, her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and frustration. I smiled, pulling out a business card. Here, give me a call tomorrow at this number. I'll help you sort it out. Travel's supposed to be fun, not stressful. They thanked me profusely, their smiles wide and genuine. It felt good to be able to help, to use my expertise to make someone's experience better. It reminded me why I loved this job in the first place.